The 911 operator on the other end of the line asked me to describe the stolen vehicle, and with a perfectly steady hand, I read her the license plate of the brand new company car my stepson had just driven away in, my own daughter laughing in the passenger seat beside him. Hi everyone. It's a comfort to be here with you again. I'm Grandma Helen. My name is Helen Sterling. I'm 70 years old, and I'm from a quiet little town in upstate New York, where the autumns are crisp and the winters are long, but the people are supposed to be good and honest. This is a story about the day I finally stopped being the nice, quiet stepmother and started being the woman my late husband always knew I was. It's a story I've kept tucked away for a few years now. My friends know parts of it. They know about the family drama. But they don't know the secret I kept for 30 years, the secret that made my final action possible. Even my own husband, God rest his soul, never knew the full extent of my involvement in the company he helped build. To tell this story feels like finally turning the lights on in a room I've kept dark for a very long time. Before I do, your support always means the world to me. If you could please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel, it feels like a quiet vote of confidence, telling me it's okay to finally speak up, to finally tell the truth about the day I reclaimed my own driver's seat. My story doesn't begin with a stolen car. It begins with love, with grease-stained hands, and with a brilliant idea scribbled on a napkin in a little diner. It begins with Frank dying. My Frank. He was a widower when I met him, a brilliant mechanic with 2 young children and a heart that was a little bit broken. He was the most honest man I'd ever known. His hands were always calloused, always had a bit of engine grease under the nails that would never quite come out, but they were the kindest, most capable hands in the world. He had a dream of opening his own garage, a place built on quality and trust, but he had the skills, not the capital. I was a young widow myself, a bookkeeper who had inherited a small but significant sum from my own late parents. I saw the genius in Frank's hands, but I also saw the dreamer who didn't know the first thing about running a business. That first night, in that diner, I took a napkin and I sketched out a business plan. A real one. I showed him how my inheritance could be the seed money, how we could build something real, something that would last. And that's how Sterling Automotive was born. It was our partnership, in every sense of the word. He was the face of the company, the master mechanic, the man everyone in town knew and trusted. I was the silent partner, the one who managed the books, negotiated with suppliers, planned the expansions. On paper, because my inheritance was the primary investment, I was the majority owner of the entire company. The silent owner. It was a secret we kept between us. It wasn't about power. It was just smart. It allowed him to be the hero, the boss, and it allowed me to do what I did best. Quietly, efficiently, make everything run. But the most important thing we ever built was our family. Frank's first wife, Sarah, had passed away from cancer, leaving him with 2 beautiful, grieving children. There was Leo, who was 10, and Clara, who was 7. My heart broke for them. I didn't try to replace their mother. I just tried to be a mother. To love them, to be a steady, gentle presence in their lives. Clara, my sweet Clara, was a joy. She was a quiet, sensitive girl who'd been so hurt by her mother's passing. She attached to me quickly, her little hand always finding its way into mine. We baked cookies, we read stories, and slowly, she began to smile again. She became my daughter, in every way that mattered. Leo was another story. He was a difficult boy, fiercely loyal to his mother's memory, and he saw me not as a new mother, but as an intruder. He tolerated me, but there was always a wall between us. He had a stubborn, resentful streak and a deep-seated belief that the world owed him something. Frank, in his grief, had spoiled the boy terribly, and it was a habit that would curdle, over the years, into a profound and toxic entitlement. I tried. Gosh, did I try. I went to his baseball games, I helped him with his homework, I treated him with the same love and fairness as Clara. But to him, I was always the outsider, the stepmother. The woman who wasn't his real mom. For 25 years, Our life was a beautiful, bustling, happy thing. Sterling Automotive grew from a single garage into the biggest independent auto service chain in the state. We weren't just comfortable, we were wealthy. We raised the children in a beautiful home, sent them to the best schools, gave them everything. Frank was the happiest I had ever seen him. A man who had built an empire with his own 2 hands, with his loving wife quietly running the engine room. And I let Leo believe that the empire would one day be his. After college, Frank brought him into the company. He wasn't a natural mechanic like his father, but he had a slick, salesman-like charm. Frank gave him a management position, wanting to groom him to one day take over. It was Frank's dream, and because it was his dream, I made it my own. I kept my ownership a secret, allowing Leo to puff out his chest and act like the heir apparent. I thought, foolishly, that the responsibility would mature him. It didn't. It just fed his entitlement. When Frank passed away from a sudden heart attack 5 years ago, the foundation of my world crumbled. And with the buffer of Frank's loving presence gone, the cracks in our family began to show. Leo, who was now married to a sharp, ambitious woman named Fiona, immediately began to act not like a grieving son, but like a new king taking his throne. He and Fiona started treating me not as the matriarch of the family, the co-founder of the company, but as a doddery old relic who needed to be managed. They would come over for dinner, and Fiona would walk through my house, her eyes scanning my furniture, my art, and she'd make little comments like, "Oh, we'll have to update this when we eventually move in." They saw me as the live-in caretaker of our future home. Clara, my sweet daughter, was caught in the middle. She had married a wonderful, down-to-earth man, and they had a quiet life of their own. She saw what Leo was doing, and it infuriated her. But her loyalty was torn. Leo was her brother, and she had a soft heart that always wanted to keep the peace. But her loyalty to me, her mother, was being tested daily. The true nature of Leo's disrespect began to surface in small, cruel ways. He started to treat me like I was incompetent. He'd helpfully explain the quarterly reports from the company to me, the very reports I had designed 30 years ago. He'd talk down to me in meetings, calling me Helen instead of Mom, positioning me as the sentimental widow of the founder, not the silent architect of its success. And he began to fixate on my age. I was only in my late 60s, still sharp as a tack, still running my own life perfectly well. But to hear Leo and Fiona talk, I was a fragile, senile creature on the verge of incompetence. It was a slow, insidious campaign to undermine my authority, my independence, and my confidence. It was all part of their long-term plan, I see now. A plan to eventually have me declared incompetent so they could take full control of the company, of the house, of everything. And the car became the symbol of their entire campaign. At first, their comments about my age were disguised as concern. It was a sweet, cloying poison that I didn't recognize until I had already swallowed it. "Are you sure you want to be driving all the way into the city by yourself, Helen?" Fiona would ask, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "The traffic is just dreadful. Why don't you let Leo drive you?" "Don't worry about climbing that stepladder to change the bulb, Mom," Leo would say, rushing to take it from me. "We can't have you falling and breaking a hip." They weren't being helpful. They were building a narrative. They were creating a story for themselves, for the family, and for me, in which I was a frail, doddering old woman, a liability who needed to be managed. Every helpful gesture was a subtle chipping away at my independence. They were trying to make me believe the story themselves, to make me doubt my own capabilities, to make me surrender my own life out of fear. My daughter, Clara, was my only defender, but her defense grew weaker and weaker under the relentless pressure from her brother. "Leo, for goodness sake, Mom is more capable than all of us put together," she'd argue in the beginning. "She's been driving in city traffic since before you were born." "I'm just worried about her, Clara," Leo would reply, his voice full of a practiced, wounded sincerity. "She's not as young as she used to be. It only takes one little mistake, one moment of confusion, for a terrible accident to happen. I just want her to be safe." He was so convincing. He played the part of the devoted, worried son to perfection. He was planting seeds of doubt, not just in my mind, but in Clara's. And slowly, tragically, they began to take root. I started to see a flicker of his manufactured worry in my own daughter's eyes. She started to echo his concerns, her voice softer, more loving, but the message was the same. "Maybe Leo's right, Mom," she'd say gently. "Maybe you should let us handle the long drives from now on, just to be on the safe side." Her words hurt more than Leo's ever could. He was acting out of greed and entitlement. But Clara, she was acting out of a manipulated, misinformed love. And that felt like a far deeper betrayal. They were turning my own daughter against me, using her love for me as a weapon. The car became the focal point of their campaign. At the time, I was driving Frank's old, reliable sedan. A beautiful, perfectly maintained car, but it was over 10 years old. A few months ago, at a company board meeting, meetings where I was still, on paper, the silent majority owner, but in practice, was treated like a sentimental mascot, Leo announced a new company policy. As part of our new executive compensation package, he declared, puffing out his chest, all senior-level managers, myself included, will be issued a new company car, a top-of-the-line luxury sedan. It's important that we project an image of success. He then turned to me, a magnanimous smile on his face. And, of course, as the widow of our esteemed founder, we would be honored to extend this perk to you as well, Mom, a brand new car, for your safety and comfort. I saw it for what it was. It wasn't a gift. It was a Trojan horse. A new, expensive car, registered to the company, would give him leverage. It would be his car, a perk he had bestowed upon me, and one he could, presumably, take away. It was a way to get me out of my own, personally owned vehicle and into one he controlled. I refused. Politely, of course. "That's very generous, Leo," I said in the meeting. "But my old car runs perfectly fine. It was Frank's. It has sentimental value." The look of irritation that flashed across his face was instant and profound. I had defied him. I had disrupted his narrative. In the weeks that followed, he and Fiona became relentless. "Mom, you're being stubborn. That old car is a death trap. The new ones have airbags everywhere, backup cameras, lane assist. They're built for safety. With phase alcohol. Helen, honestly, it's a bad look for the company. The founder's widow driving around in a 15-year-old clunker. It makes us look cheap." They wore me down. They went to Clara, filling her head with horror stories of elderly drivers and tragic accidents. They convinced her that my stubbornness was a sign of my own cognitive decline. Finally, Clara came to me, her eyes filled with tears, begging me to accept the new car. "Please, Mom," she whispered, her voice choked with a genuine, terrified love. "Please do it for me. I can't bear the thought of something happening to you. I'd never forgive myself." And what could I do? They had checkmated me. To refuse now would be to break my own daughter's heart. So I surrendered. "All right," I said, the words feeling like a defeat. "All right, I'll take the car." The day the car was delivered was a spectacle of smug triumph. It was a gleaming silver luxury sedan, the kind of car that cost more than the first house Frank and I had ever bought. It was beautiful, I suppose, if you like that sort of cold, anonymous perfection. Leo and Fiona presented it to me with a grand flourish, a giant red bow on the hood. Leo handed me the keys. "There you go, Mom," he said, his voice full of a patronizing largesse. A car befitting the woman who started it all. Safe, reliable, and all taken care of by the company. You don't have to worry about a thing. I knew what he meant. We are in control now. We will take care of you, you poor, incompetent old thing. I took the keys, and they felt cold and heavy in my hand. They didn't feel like the keys to a new car. They felt like the keys to a very comfortable, very luxurious cage. For a few weeks, everything was fine. I drove the new car. It was smooth and quiet and filled with 1,000 buttons I didn't understand. But I missed the familiar rumble of Frank's old engine. I missed the worn spot on the leather of the driver's seat that had molded to the shape of his body, and then to mine. The true purpose of the car was revealed a month later. It was the week of my 70th birthday. My children had planned a big party for me at a lovely restaurant in town. The day before the party, Leo and Fiona came over, along with Clara. They sat me down in my own living room. It felt like an intervention. "Mom," Leo began, his face a mask of solemn concern. "We need to talk about your driving." My heart went cold. What about my driving? I haven't had so much as a parking ticket in 50 years. I know. "It's not about your record, Mom," Fiona chimed in, her voice smooth as silk. "It's about your reflexes, your reaction time. We've all noticed you seem a bit slower lately, a bit more forgetful." It was a lie, a complete and utter fabrication. But they said it with such conviction, with such a united front of loving concern, that for a terrifying second, I almost believed them. Had I been forgetful? Was I slower? Clara, my sweet, manipulated Clara, was their final, most devastating weapon. She reached out and took my hand. "Mom," she said, her eyes welling with tears. "Last week, when we were driving to the market, you almost missed the turn onto Main Street. You had to brake suddenly. It scared me." It was the most innocuous, everyday driving moment, the kind that happens to everyone a dozen times a week. But they had taken it, twisted it, and polished it into a piece of evidence for their case. A case for my incompetence. "We just don't think it's safe for you to be driving anymore, Mom," Leo said, delivering the final blow. "Especially not in a powerful car like the new one. So, we've decided, as a family, that it would be best if we held on to the keys for you. Just for a while. For your own good. Merci." He held out his hand. He was asking me to hand over the keys to my own car? To my own independence. He was grounding me. In my own house. At the age of 70. I looked at my children. I saw the smug, triumphant certainty in Leah's eyes. I saw the calculated sympathy on Fiona's face. And I saw the heartbreaking, tear-filled, genuine worry on Clara's. She believed it. They had made her believe that her own mother was a danger to herself. In that moment, the last vestiges of the quiet, accommodating woman I had been my whole life burned away. The anger was so pure, so white-hot, it felt like a physical force. But I didn't let it show. Oh no. I had learned. A quiet, smiling surrender was the most powerful weapon in this house. I took a deep, shuddering breath. I looked at Leah's outstretched hand, and I placed the keys in his palm. "You're right," I whispered, my voice a perfect imitation of a defeated, heartbroken old woman. "You're right. If you're all so worried, then you should take them. I don't want to be a burden." The look of relief that washed over their faces was disgusting. They had won. They had finally, completely, caged me. "Thank you for understanding, Mom," Leo said, his voice full of a magnanimous pity that made my skin crawl. He pocketed the keys. My keys. The next day was the party. My 70th birthday party. Leo and Fiona insisted on picking me up. Of course they did. I was their precious, fragile cargo now. The party was lovely. All my friends were there. But I couldn't enjoy it. I felt like a prisoner on a day pass. Towards the end of the evening, I saw Leo, Fiona, and my daughter, Clara, huddled in a corner, talking in low, urgent whispers. Leo was looking at his watch. Clara looked excited about something. They came over to my table. Clara was beaming, a genuine happy smile on her face for the first time in weeks. "Mom," she said, her voice full of excitement, "I have the most wonderful surprise for you. You know how you've always wanted to see that new musical in the city? Well, Leo managed to get us last-minute tickets for tonight. We're all going to drive down together after the party." My heart gave a little lurch. A night out. With my children. It was a peace offering. A sign that maybe, just maybe, things could be okay. But then Leo spoke. "Well, not wholly of us," he said with a chuckle, patting my hand. "It'll be a late night, Mom, way past your bedtime, and we'll be taking the new car, you know, for the legroom." He jingled the keys in his pocket. "My keys. You don't mind, Do you? Fiona and I will drop Clara off, and then we'll just head home to our place from the city. We'll bring the car back for you in the morning. Noon. And then came the final, most brutal, and most stupidly arrogant betrayal of all. He looked at me, a smug, dismissive smile playing on his lips. Besides, he said, his voice loud enough for the people at the next table to hear, you're too old to drive anyway. What's the point of you even having a car? Clara's face fell. She saw the cruelty of it. But she was so caught up in the excitement of the surprise that she didn't protest. She just looked at me with a pleading expression. Please, Mom. Don't make a scene. Don't ruin this. Oh. I looked at my stepson. I looked at the keys in his pocket, keys to a car owned by a company I secretly control. I looked at my own daughter, about to get into that car for a joyride, a celebration of my own imprisonment. And I smiled. A slow, serene, and utterly terrifying smile. No, dear, I said, my voice as sweet as honey. I don't mind at all. You young people go and have your fun. You're right. An old woman like me has no need for a car like that. You drive safe now, you hear? He laughed, a triumphant, condescending sound. Don't worry, Mom. We will. Non. I watched them leave the restaurant, laughing and giddy. My stepson, the new king, and my own daughter, his happy, willing accomplice. They got into my beautiful silver company-owned car, and they drove off into the night. I waited until I was sure they were on the highway. I took out my cell phone, and with a hand that was as steady as a rock, I dialed 911. 911. What is your emergency? The operator asked. Hello, I said, my voice the perfect blend of a frail, frightened old woman. I'd like to report a stolen car. The 911 operator's voice was calm and professional, a stark contrast to the maelstrom of emotion swirling inside me. But my own voice, when I spoke, was a masterpiece of performance. I was a frail, slightly confused, and deeply frightened old woman whose car had just been stolen by a brazen young man. Ma'am, can you describe the vehicle for me? She asked, her voice patient. Oh yes, dear, I said, my voice trembling ever so slightly. It's a brand new silver Sterling sedan. Sterling is the brand. A beautiful, fancy car. My son, my late husband's son, he just bought it for me, so I'd be safe. I let that little detail hang in the air, a perfect, poisonous seed of irony. And the license plate? I had memorized it the day it was delivered. I read the numbers and letters to her, slowly and clearly. It has a little frame around it, I added, a touch of artistic detail. It says Sterling Automotive, quality you can trust. And you said you know the person who took it? The operator asked. Well, I think so, I said, my voice full of a heartbreaking, manufactured confusion. He was here at my birthday party. My stepson, Leo, and my daughter, Clara. He was talking about how it was such a powerful car. He said I was too old to drive it. He was joking, I think. But then they were gone. And the car was gone. He took the keys right out of my purse, I think. I had just constructed the perfect airtight narrative. He had motive. He thought I was too old to drive. He had means, he admitted to taking the keys, and he had opportunity. And my own daughter was his accomplice. Okay, ma'am, the operator said, her voice now crisp and efficient. We're putting out an all-points bulletin for the vehicle right now. An officer will be at your location shortly to take a full statement. Can you stay on the line with me? No. Yes, dear, I whispered. Thank you. I'm so frightened. I wasn't frightened. I was electrified. For the first time in years, I wasn't a passenger in my own life. I was behind the wheel, my foot pressed firmly on the accelerator. This wasn't just about a car. This was about my independence, my dignity, my very identity. They had tried to cage me, to declare me incompetent. They had no idea that the quiet, smiling old woman they had just left behind was the one who had built the cage they were all living in. The police officer who arrived was a young, kind-faced man who looked at me with such profound pity, it was almost comical. I gave him my statement, my voice trembling, my hands clasped together like a frightened bird. I was the very picture of a vulnerable senior citizen who had been taken advantage of by her greedy, arrogant Stepson. I was, I have to admit, brilliant. Meanwhile, 100 miles down the highway, my children were driving straight into the trap I had set for them. I found out the details later from a mortified Clara and a furious company lawyer. They were speeding, of course. Leo, drunk on his own power and a couple of glasses of birthday champagne, was showing off the car's acceleration. They were singing along to the radio. They were celebrating their victory over the dotty old woman. And then the world exploded in a flash of red and blue lights. 2 state trooper cars surrounded them, forcing them to the shoulder of the highway. They were pulled out of the car at gunpoint, just as procedure dictates for a stolen vehicle, stop involving potentially dangerous subjects. They were handcuffed and put in the back of separate patrol cars. The irony was so thick, so delicious, I could have eaten it with a spoon. My son, the self-proclaimed king of Sterling Automotive, was being arrested for stealing a Sterling Automotive Company car. And my daughter, the sweet, gentle girl who was so worried about my safety, was sitting in the back of a police car, a suspected accomplice in a grand theft auto. They spent the night in a holding cell at a state trooper barracks. It wasn't the glamorous night in the city they had planned. The phone call came at 3 a.m. It was a frantic, terrified Clara, calling from the police station. "Mom! Oh my God, Mom, you have to help us. There's been a terrible mistake. They think we stole the car. They said you reported it stolen. You have to tell them it was a misunderstanding." Yeah, they wanted. I let a long, sleepy, confused pause hang in the air. "Clara, darling, what's wrong? What are you talking about? Leo stole the car. I called the police." "No!" she shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria. "He didn't steal it. You let him take it. We were going to the city for the surprise." "Oh, darling," I said, my voice a soft, heartbreaking croon of a confused old woman. I think I remember that. But he said I was too old. He took the keys. I was so upset, so frightened. I get so confused sometimes, you know that. My memory, it's not what it used to be. Did I say he could take it? I just don't remember. The police officer was so kind. I just told him what happened. And I had just given myself the perfect alibi. The very narrative of senility and incompetence they had so carefully constructed for me was now my shield. How could they argue? They were the ones who had been telling everyone I was losing my mind. If I was confused, it was their own fault. They had laid the trap, and I had simply, gracefully, and with a touch of theatrical genius, sprung it on them. This was my fight back. It wasn't a confrontation. It wasn't an argument. It was a quiet, legal, and ruthlessly logical consequence. They wanted to treat me like an incompetent child. Fine. Long. Then they would have to deal with the messy, unpredictable consequences of an incompetent child's actions. The next morning, I did not call the police back to clear up the misunderstanding. I called the head of the legal department at Sterling Automotive. "Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice now clear, sharp, and all business. "This is Helen Sterling. We have a situation. The company vehicle assigned to our acting CEO, Leo Sterling, was involved in an incident last night. He was arrested for grand theft auto, accompanied by my daughter, Clara. This is, as you can imagine, a public relations nightmare." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Mr. Henderson had worked with Frank for 30 years. He knew me as the quiet, smiling wife in the background. He had no idea he was speaking to his real boss. "I want the company to press full charges," I continued, my voice cold as steel. "We cannot have the man representing our brand being seen as a car thief. It undermines our entire company motto of quality, you can trust. I want him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." "Helen," he gasped. Press charges? Against your own stepson? Frank would, Frank, I cut him off, would be appalled at his son's arrogance, disrespect, and utter lack of integrity. This is not a family matter, Mr. Henderson. This is a corporate matter. And as the silent majority owner of this corporation, I am giving you a direct order. Is that understood? The silence on the other end of the line was so profound, I could hear the man's entire worldview shifting. Majority owner? Entering. Yes, Mrs. Sterling, he finally stammered, his voice now a mixture of shock and a new, profound deference. Yes, I understand perfectly. I hung up the phone. I had just fired a torpedo into the side of my stepson's life. He hadn't just stolen a car. He had stolen from the company. And the company, it turned out, was me. He had declared war on a woman, not realizing he was a foot soldier attacking a 5-star general. I then made my final call. To a very exclusive, very expensive assisted living facility. The kind of place with a waiting list and a view of the mountains. Hello? I said to the director. My name is Helen Sterling. I'd like to book your finest suite. Yes, for a long-term stay. I'll be paying in full, in advance. They thought they were going to put me in a home. They were right. I was going to put myself in one. But it would be a palace. And it would be my choice. A fortress of my own independence, paid for by the profits of the company they thought they controlled. My cage was about to become my castle. And I was finally, gloriously, taking the keys. The fallout from that one phone call to the police was a beautiful, cascading series of consequences. The charges were formally pressed by the company. Leo was facing a felony grand theft auto charge, and Clara, a misdemeanor charge as an accessory. The story was, just as I'd anticipated, a public relations nightmare for Sterling Automotive. But the victim wasn't the company. The victim, in the court of public opinion, was me. The sweet, confused, recently widowed old woman whose ungrateful stepson had stolen her car right after her own birthday party. I was showered with sympathy. Leo was showered with scorn. He was immediately suspended from his position as acting CEO, pending the outcome of the legal proceedings. The board, under a new and very clear directive from their newly revealed majority owner, had no choice. His face was plastered all over the local news. The story of the arrogant heir who stole a car from his elderly stepmother was just too juicy to ignore. His carefully constructed image of the powerful, successful businessman was shattered overnight. The legal battle was short and brutal. Leo and Fiona hired an expensive lawyer who tried to argue that it was all a family misunderstanding. He painted me as a vindictive, senile old woman who had forgotten she'd given permission. But I had the perfect defense. Their own words. My lawyer simply presented the mountain of evidence of their year-long campaign to have me declared incompetent. He brought in witnesses, friends, neighbors, even the doctor who had treated my sprained ankle, who all testified to Leo and Fiona's relentless narrative that I was confused and forgetful. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my lawyer said in his closing argument, the defense claims this was a simple misunderstanding. They claim that my client, Helen Sterling, is a confused old woman. On this point, we agree. But who is responsible for that confusion? Who spent a year telling anyone who would listen that this sharp, capable woman was losing her mind? The defendants did. They built the trap, and then they had the audacity to be surprised when it sprang. You cannot have it both ways. It was a checkmate. The charges against Clara were eventually dropped, in exchange for her tearful public testimony against her brother. That was the most painful part of it all, watching my daughter have to choose. But she chose the truth. She chose me. The jury found Leo guilty. He didn't serve jail time, but he was given a hefty fine, a long probation, and a felony on his record that made him unemployable in the corporate world he so desperately wanted to inhabit. He was, in a word, finished. I dropped the charges eventually. I had made my point. But the consequences were permanent. I convened an emergency board meeting for Sterling Automotive. I walked in, not as the quiet founder's widow, but as the active majority owner. I fired Leo permanently. And in his place, I appointed a new CEO, a brilliant, hard-working woman who had started in the company as a mechanic 20 years ago. The company, under her leadership, is more successful than ever. And what of my relationship with my children? Clara and I are closer than ever. The ordeal forced her to see her brother and herself with a brutal clarity. She is no longer caught in the middle. She is firmly, lovingly, on the side of the truth. We healed. Leo and Fiona. Their marriage did not survive the public humiliation and the financial ruin. She left him not long after the trial. He moved away, I hear, and works at a small, independent garage somewhere, a man finally forced to do the honest, hands-on work he had always looked down upon. He has tried to apologize, but his apologies, like his father's son, are weak and self-serving. There are some things that, once broken, can never be fully restored. And me? I did not move into the assisted living facility. I booked it to make a point, to feel the power of my own choice. But in the end, I knew I didn't need it. I am not a frail old woman. I am the woman who built an empire from a napkin sketch, who raised 2 children, who outsmarted a greedy fool who underestimated her. I sold my big, empty house. I bought a beautiful, smaller home on a lake. I even bought myself a new car, a bright red convertible. I drive it whenever and wherever I please. The lesson I learned, the one I want to share with all of you, is a simple one. The world will often try to tell you who you are, especially as you get older. It will try to label you as frail, confused, incompetent, or a burden. It will try to take your keys away, literally and figuratively. Do not let it. You are the only person who gets to define you. Your mind is your own, your strength is your own, and your life is your own. Never let anyone, not even the people you love, convince you that you are too old, too weak, or too anything to be the driver of your own destiny. You built the car. You own the road. And you get to decide where it goes. Don't ever be afraid to report a thief, especially when the thing they are trying to steal is your own self-respect. Thank you so much for taking this ride with me today. It feels wonderful to finally tell the whole story from my own driver's seat. If my story helped you feel a little more powerful, I would be so honored if you would like this video and subscribe to our channel. And please, don't forget to ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. The comments section is a place where we can all share the keys to our own wisdom, so please, feel free to share a story of a time you refused to be a passenger in your own life. Love you all. This is Grandma Helen, and I'll see you in the next story.